I've come to Blackpool this evening so I can try out some long exposure nighttime photography. As you can probably tell behind me, sun is just setting. And in this video, what I'm hoping to do is try and show you some essential tips for doing long exposure nighttime photography. Now, it's a bit different from some of my other long exposure photography because particularly one of the reasons I've come to Blackpool today is it's actually illumination season, and it's just around sunset now, as I mentioned, so the lights will be coming on shortly, and that should make for some really interesting photos. Many photographers struggle with low light conditions and capturing vibrant sort of cityscapes at night. It often results in blurring or understated images, and that can be a real frustration when you've pictured something amazing in your mind. But the truth is, nighttime, and particularly long exposures, requires a different set of techniques than it does for daytime shots. Understanding how to work with low light conditions is crucial to capturing stunning nighttime city shots. Moreover, it's not just about the technical aspects, it's also about being patient and persistent. See, the thing about nighttime shots is you can create a lot of drama in them because with those light trails you can create things like movement. So you need to be willing to experiment, particularly with things like your exposure settings. I've got my first location in mind, so I'll head over to that and see exactly where I want to set up my camera. So what I've done here is I've tried to do a couple of long exposures. Now, with a long exposure, what you're going to get is, because the traffic is passing through quite quickly, and you don't pick up much of the light trails unless you do it for a really long time. I've tried one for actually about 7.5 minutes and it's just starting to put them in. So I think if I did one maybe 10-15 minutes long, then I could get a really more interesting light trail right round the roundabout. It really depends how much traffic there is. What the long exposure does do, brings out any colour in the sky. It perhaps gives me the opportunity to do a nice black and white conversion as well. That's the end of my little photo shoot in Blackpool. What have I learned from the experience? One is get your composition right. There's lots of things that will help you, but I often found that I just had to walk around a bit and move a few times before I got the perfect composition that I wanted. The other thing I would say is you really have got to be patient with this thing. It took me quite a long time and quite a few goes to get exactly the right shutter speed. Often my highlights would be blown, and I didn't want that. One of the things I was specifically trying to avoid. Now, with most of my shots, I metered spot metering and exposed for the highlights. So I took a shot that was exposed for the highlights. I took then another 10 or 12 shots so that I would get some light trails that I can blend together. And I also did a long exposure shot. Final thing I would say, just enjoy the experience. Don't expect to get everything all on your first outing. I was spoilt for choice with locations to go for, and I just honed it down and decided I would just take shots in 3 places just to try and limit my time. I've actually been here about 3.5 hours, so that gives you an idea of how long it's taken me. Of course, it's taken longer because I'm filming a video, but just take your time, be patient, enjoy the experience, learn from what you're doing, and you'll learn what exposure settings you want very quickly. Right, I'm going back to my darkroom now, and we'll see what we've done with them, and I'll give you a little rundown of how I've processed them. Let me share with you the shots I took. This is perhaps the best one I got at the Spitfire roundabout. Actually quite a short exposure. It's 3.2 seconds at f11. A quick tip for you is if you want to try and get starburst effects from lights, you need a narrow aperture, so go like f10 or narrower. Now, I did try a few other combinations. I tried a very long exposure of around 5 minutes. I tried one of 7 minutes, and I did a number of short ones with 4 to 6 seconds to try and get some nice light trails. And frankly, I wasn't very happy with any of them. Fundamentally, I don't think I nailed the composition or the location. And this is one of the learning experiences you get. And what I learned from this was, one, is I don't like the clutter in the background. I should have paid more attention to that when setting up my shot, but I don't think actually there was a better angle here. The other thing I found is actually because of the density of the traffic at this roundabout, it was either moving too fast across my scene, so I couldn't get interesting light trails. The direction the traffic was choosing wasn't making for interesting effects either. And the other thing is, because traffic was coming in from lots of different directions, lights were spilling onto the grass below the Spitfires and creating lots of little spurious light trails that really just didn't add to the composition. So really the only way I would have got something nice here would have been to do a lot of manipulation afterwards, which I just didn't really want to do. The second location I chose was further down the prom, and I did this view of Blackpool Tower, and I was quite happy with a couple of these. Here's the black and white version, and here's a colour one. Now, these are both long exposures of around 150 seconds. I also took some shorter exposures that were really exposed for the highlights. Now, the spot I chose to meter for my highlights was the signboards on the pubs in the background. And I probably should have chosen the car headlights, but that was quite a difficult thing to do because they were moving. But the other issue here was the traffic was moving at quite a different speed to the traffic at the roundabout. It got held up at the lights. So very quickly I found that highlights would burn out. And so the long exposures worked just as well as the shorter exposures from that point of view. The benefit of the longer exposure is it tended to bring up more detail in the shadows. So those were the shots I went for, and that was my real learning experience here, is you really have to pay a lot of attention to what is going on with things like traffic, how fast it's moving across your frame, and make your decisions on shutter speed based on that. This is my third shot. And actually what I was most happy with was a blend of 2 long exposure shots, and that's what this is. The 2 long exposures were both taken at 150 seconds. Now what I found was the colour change on the tower itself was quite slow, so you could get quite long periods of it being one colour. So it actually worked nicely, and when I blended the 2 together, I was able to play and get this combination looking like it was changing colour. I did a black and white conversion as well. I don't think that's quite as effective as the colour shot. I also tried some shorter exposures that would give you the individual colours to give me the options to blend those if I wanted to. But in actual fact, I found, again, what worked best here was the long exposure, because it tends to bring out more of the details in the shadows. And what you've got to be careful of, as always, is not trying to blow your highlights. So to sum it up, I think what I found is one of the things I need to do is more practice on nighttime exposures. I also thought it'd actually be a really interesting location to go back and do some nighttime street photos as well, because there's always a lot going on, especially when the illuminations are lit in Blackpool, and you tend to get some quite colourful characters wandering around as well. So if you've enjoyed this video, please do let me know in the comments. If you've got any tips you'd like to share with other viewers about nighttime photography and long exposures, please do leave those in the comments as well. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time.